Hi all, this is Joan, Director of Education and Visitor Engagement at the Westmoreland, and today I'm going to introduce you to a family portrait in our collection. Let's take a look together, shall we? So this portrait is called the Robert B. Sterling Family Portrait, and it was painted in 1859. Take a moment to look at all the details in here. Maybe look from left to right, starting with the mother and the two children, and then into the middle of the canvas where we see the father, and then to the right of him where we see a third child. And then as we go further right in the background, we see a house. Now this family portrait was painted by an artist named Emil Foerster, and it was painted in 1859. It was actually painted in Pittsburgh. So as you look at this family portrait, what are the things that stand out to you? Perhaps you notice that the father, Robert, is dominating the middle of the canvas. What does that say to you about him? Well, it's probably acknowledging that he is the center of the family. He is the most important person in this portrait. He is standing dead center. What are some of the words that come to mind when you look at Robert? Proud, content, relaxed. Let's take a look at some of the other members of Robert's family. Let's take a look at his wife and the two children that are beside her. Take a look at what she's wearing, what the children are wearing. Now, you can probably guess that the child standing over her right shoulder is clearly an older daughter. She's wearing a blue dress. How about that baby on the mother's knee? Well, the infant is wearing a white dress, little black patent leather shoes, and there is a red sash around the infant's waist. Let's take a look at the child standing closer to the father. What do you notice about what this child is wearing? So this child seems to be wearing a dress also. Let's take a look at Mrs. Sterling. She's sitting, holding the infant, and her older daughter is standing close by. The material of her dress looks as though it could possibly be some kind of taffeta. There's a sheen coming off of it. The color, however, is rather subdued. She's wearing more of a brown, somber color. What are some of the words that come to mind as you look at Mrs. Sterling? Relaxed, calm, content. If you look at her face, she's looking out at us, the viewer. Maybe happy to share with us her contentment in her family. You might notice that around her neck, she is wearing some kind of necklace that has a pearl cross attached to it. And if you look at the daughter immediately behind her, she is also wearing a similar piece of jewelry, except that hers seems to have a pearl necklace as well as the pearl cross, perhaps symbolizing, of course, that they are churchgoers, Christians. The fact that they're pearls is probably very symbolic. We're going to talk a little bit more about the symbolism in this painting. What do you see when you look at these three children? Now, we had a quick look at the fact that they're all wearing different types of dresses. So do you see three girls in the painting? You might well do at first glance. Most people do. However, you might be surprised to find out that the child standing closest to the father is actually a boy. In the 1800s and prior to that, it actually was not unusual for boys to wear dresses up until the age of around 6 or 7, which interestingly enough was also around the time they would get their first haircut. And if you take a look at our young boy, at his hair, you'll notice that his hair is long. It looks not unlike his older sister's, and it is curled into some beautiful ringlets. Now, as I said, it was not unusual for children of either gender to wear dresses up until the age of 6 or 7. After that, you would see a change in fashion where the boys would dress a little bit more like their fathers, and the girls' dress would adapt to look a little bit more like mom's. If you look at photographs of families from the 1800s, you might notice that it is indeed quite difficult to determine whether young children are boys or girls, because so many of them were wearing such similar clothing and, as I said, frequently had longer hair. So if we take a look at the infant, now I'm going to ask you, can you guess, is the infant a boy or a girl? Were you able to guess? Well, actually, this infant would be a girl. Now you might ask, how do I know that? Because there's nothing on earth that could possibly tell me this is a girl. Well, this is where we're going to look at a little bit of symbolism. Take a look at what the older sister is handing to her younger sister. That's right, she's handing her some cherries. If you look at other artworks from the 1800s and 1900s, the 1900s in particular, you can often find cherries in paintings alongside portraits of young women and young girls. These paintings where young girls were featured, oftentimes with cherries either in baskets or in their hands, were a way of the artists acknowledging their future ripeness and womanhood. Cherries in earlier paintings actually symbolize something a little different. They were often featured in religious paintings, being held by the infant Christ as a way to symbolize purity. So since it is possible to read cherries within the context of the Christian faith, we could also link that symbolism of the cherries in this painting to the symbolism of the pearls around the young girl's neck and of the pearls in the cross around her mother's. Pearls are also considered to be a symbol of purity. Let's talk a little bit more about the dresses that young children and infants wore. So it was the norm for young infants and toddlers to basically wear white dresses and white clothing in general. This was because, of course, the material could be bleached and kept clean. So once children had grown out of the infancy and toddler stage, the dresses might have become a little bit more elaborate. And as you notice, as in the case of the young boy standing close to the dad, we've moved into a fabric that is more of a plaid or a tartan pattern. And we're going to look a little bit at the symbolism behind what the child is wearing, as well as looking at the waistcoat that the dad is wearing. Plaid is a fabric or a pattern that is probably quite familiar to many of us. We see it oftentimes in numerous fashion statements. I mean, who hasn't seen images of lumberjacks wearing plaid flannel shirts, right? For many of us who are stuck at home during COVID-19, many of us may be wearing our flannel plaid jammies. I could be wearing them for all you know. You might recognize the name Sterling as a Scottish name, and you would be correct. And you might then assume that the child is probably wearing a family tartan. However, I tried to do some little bit of sleuthing and was unable to find a tartan or a plaid that looked like what this boy is wearing associated with the Sterling family. Online, I discovered that it can be a little bit difficult finding tartans if you're interested in them. There are about somewhere between 3,500 and 7,000 different registered tartans. You might also notice that the young boy is wearing 3 very distinctly different types of plaid patterns. One, in fact, is his Argyle socks, which is another clan association from Scotland. And the dress that he's wearing has a very different pattern from the sash or blanket that he is wearing draped across his shoulders and tied around his waist. It is possible that he could be wearing tartan or plaid from the mother's family, but unfortunately I don't know her name. One of the interesting things I did discover, though, was that there is a slight difference between tartan and plaid. While they can be used interchangeably to more or less speak to the same thing, a tartan is a plaid pattern that is associated with a clan or family or a community, whereas a plaid does not have any association with heritage behind it. So it is also possible, of course, that this young boy is wearing just a simple plaid that is not associated with family. Now, I also asked you to take a look at what Dad was wearing because we were going to talk a little bit about his. If you look at his vest or waistcoat, you might notice that it also has some type of tartan or plaid pattern, and there are many black and white simple plaid patterns that you can find online. However, I was not able to associate the plaid pattern that he's wearing with his clan or family name either. It is possible that this is another device that the family and the artist used to link the father and son together and to clue us into the fact that this is the male line that we're looking at here in this family. One of the last items of this painting that I'm going to leave you with a few details to tell you a little more, is about the hoop that the young boy is holding. Now, that potentially could have clued us into the fact that this child is also a boy. However, it was not unusual for girls to play with a similar toy. However, in the case of the girls' hoops, they were often made of wood rather than metal, and it looks like this boy is holding a metal hoop. This was a popular game for young children in the 1800s. As I said, both boys and girls played variations on it. The stick that he's holding was used to help propel the hoop, and then he would run along behind it and try and keep it going for as long as possible. Oftentimes, the boys would have races to see who could keep their hoop going the longest. We could read the symbolism of the hoop in this painting as another acknowledgement that not only is this a male child, but he is of an age where he can still be carefree and playing games. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Sterling family portrait with me and enjoyed learning a little bit more about the mid-1800s and the fashion behind it, as well as the symbolism that is often used in artwork. I was just thinking, if you're stuck at home with your family and you're all used to just wearing your jammies or your sweats, maybe you want to think about creating a special family portrait to commemorate this time. Maybe you want to take the challenge to dress up a little more and to consider some of the symbols you might want to use in a family portrait that could tell us a little bit more about yourselves. Think about the clothes you're going to wear and maybe some of the items that might be in there with you. Whether you're going to take the photograph outside and give us a little more information about where you live geographically, or whether you're going to take it inside somewhere. Just seems like it might be a fun thing to do if you're stuck at home inside and bored right now. In the meantime, I want to thank you very much for joining me, and I want to say, just have some fun with what you're wearing, and don't be afraid to mix it up like that young boy did in his portrait. There's no rules that say you can't mix and match your patterns. Thank you for joining me, everyone, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, and have a good time making that family portrait.